We're going to begin this meeting. I'm Brad Eckenweiler. I'm the CEO of Lifestyle Delivery Systems, and I want to thank all of the shareholders that showed up today for this meeting, and those of you that were able to take the tour. We're going to bring this meeting to order. Do I have a second? John? Casey, can I get that second? There it is. All right, we got a second. We're to order. We're recording this so that those of you or others who weren't able to make the meeting today will be able to see this. Probably won't be on the website till Monday, but this meeting will in fact be taped so that those of you that may have missed something or wonder if, did I hear that right? You'll be able to look back and find out if that was indeed the case. With us today are two of our shareholders besides myself. One is Casey Fenwick, our president. The other is Dr. John Sanderson, head of our medical director. The recording this afternoon will also be supplemented with a complete transcript of these meetings. So again, those will be published for you to peruse. Let's see. What else do we have here? We're going to conduct this annual meeting first upon the adjournment, immediate convene the assembly, and at that time we'll report on the operating results for the past year and the outlook of the remainder of 2019. There'll be a period for discussion, questions. This format will allow us to complete our formal business matters expeditiously and then move to matters of general interest concerning the company's operation. So basically, we're going to do our shareholders meeting first, and then if you have additional questions or there's other things that maybe questions that have come up since the tour, we can certainly answer those and revisit them. I'd like to now introduce to you Andrew Prochnow, who will be taking over as the operating piece of the meeting, and so he will act as secretary and will take all the formal obligations with regards to running the meeting. Andrew.
Thank you, Brad. The board fixed March 21st, 2019 as the record date for determining shareholders entitled to vote at this meeting. The company appointed Computershare Trust Company of Canada to mail a notice of meeting and proxy statement to all shareholders of record on that date, or as of that date. We are in possession of an affidavit of mailing attesting to these proxy statements having been delivered to all shareholders. As stated in the notice, the purpose of this meeting is as follows. First, to receive and consider the audited financial statements of the company for the fiscal years ended December 31, 2016 and December 31, 2017, and the reports of the auditors and management discussion and analysis related thereto. Second, to set the number of directors for the company for the upcoming year at 4. Third, to elect 4 directors for the ensuing term. And fourth, to ratify the appointment of independent registered public accounting firm Dale Matheson Carr-Hilton Labonte LLP as the auditor of the company for the ensuing year. Finally, if there's any other business that may properly come before the meeting, we'll transact that as well. According to Computershare Trust Company of Canada, the company's transfer agent, as of March 21, 2019, there were a total of 119,741,031 shares of common stock of the company issued and outstanding, which are eligible to vote at this meeting. Based on the information received and the votes made in person and any votes that may be made in person during this meeting, I will act as the inspector of election for the matters voted on today. A quorum for the transaction of business of the company at a meeting of the shareholders is at least one person who is or who represents by proxy one or more shareholders who, in the aggregate, hold at least 5% of the issued shares entitled to vote. There are more than 5% of the voting power of the outstanding shares of LDS present at this meeting. Accordingly, Mr. Chairman, a quorum is present, and you may proceed with the meeting agenda.
On the basis of the Secretary's report, the meeting is duly convened. The polls for each matter to be voted on
at this meeting will open after a particular proposal has been presented and will close immediately after it has been determined there are no further questions pertaining to the proposal upon that discussion. We will not conduct the formal business as set forth in the notice of the meeting. In order to conduct an orderly meeting and give all eligible shareholders an opportunity to participate, we will follow the proposals as outlined in the notice of annual general meeting delivered to each shareholder. During the conduct of the company's formal business, questions and comments from the floor should pertain specifically to the proposal then under consideration. I ask that anyone wishing to speak or raise a question, please raise their hand and may then so afford the opportunity to speak. Mr. Secretary, would you please present the first item included in the notice?
Mr. Chairman, the first item of business is the receipt and consideration of the audited financial statements of the company for the 2 fiscal years ended December 31, 2016 and December 31, 2017 respectively, and the reports of the auditors and the management discussion and analysis related thereto.
At this time, I'd like to open up the discussion. Any questions regarding the audited financial statements of the company for the 2 fiscal years ended December 31, 2016 and December 31, 2017 respectfully, and reports and auditors and management discussions and analysis related thereto. Are there any questions or comments with regards to the 2016-2017 financial audited statements which have been filed with CDAR? I see no questions. If there are no further questions, we will proceed with the rest of our agenda. Mr. Secretary, would you please present the next item included in the notice?
Mr. Chairman, the second item of business is to set the number of directors of the company for the ensuing year at 4 persons.
I move that we adopt the following resolution. Be it resolved that the number of directors of the company for the ensuing year be set at 4 persons. Do I have a second?
Second.
The motion will now be open for discussion. Any discussion on the number of shareholders? Shareholders who have sent proxies need not take any further action with respect to any matters that they voted on today. If a shareholder wishes to vote in person, please raise your hand and keep it raised until it has been, until the ballot has been properly identified. You should sign the ballot, place it in an envelope, and provide it, deliver it to Mr. Prochnow. Are there any votes or proxies to be delivered? The motion will now come to a vote. Those voting to keep the number of shareholders at 4, raise their hands. Majority? Majority passes.
Mr. Chairman, based on the votes present today and the preliminary report received from the transfer agent, a majority of votes have been cast in favor of your resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Based on the preliminary report of the Inspector of the Election on the votes cast in person today, I declare that the number of directors of the company for the ensuing year is set at 4 persons. Mr. Secretary, would you please present the next item included in the notice?
Mr. Chairman, the next item of business is to elect the following individuals as named in the notice of meeting and proxy statement to the board of directors of the company for the ensuing year. Brad Eckenweiler, Casey Fenwick, Dr. John Sanderson, and Yannicka Selina.
I move to adopt the following resolution. Be it resolved that Brad Eckenweiler, Casey Fenwick, Dr. John Sanderson, and Yannicka Selina will be elected directors of the company for the ensuing year. I move to adopt the following. Skip the page, sorry. I declare the nomination. Are there any votes against? I see no votes against. I declare the nomination closed. Are there any other nominations to come forth? Anyone else want to nominate a director? I see no nominations. resolutions coming forth. The articles of the company as amended require the shareholders to provide names and nominees to the secretary. Since there are no additional nominations, no notifications are necessary. The motion is now open for discussion. Does anyone want to discuss the structure within those individuals being selected for directors? No discussion. The motion will now come to a vote.
Mr. Chairman, based on the results received from the proxies, the transfer agent has determined that the proposed resolution is carried by the necessary majority of votes cast.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Based on a preliminary report of the inspector of the election and the votes cast in person today, I declare that Brad Eckenweiler, Casey Fenwick, Dr. John Sanderson, Yannicka Selena are hereby elected as directors of the company. Mr. Secretary, would you please present this?
Mr. Chairman, the next item of business is to appoint Dale Matheson, Carr Hilton Levante LLP as the auditor of the company for the ensuing year, and to authorize the directors to fix the remuneration to be paid to the auditors.
I move to adopt the following resolution. Resolve that Dale Matheson, Carr Hilton Levante LLP be appointed as auditor of the company for the ensuing year, and that the directors be authorized to fix remuneration to be paid to those auditors. The motion is now open for discussion. Are there any discussion points for the auditors? No discussion points. The motion will now come to a vote. Mr. Chairman. Oh, that's you.
Mr. Chairman, the transfer agent has presented her preliminary report, and based thereon has determined that the proposed resolution is carried by the necessary majority of votes cast.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Based on the preliminary report of the inspector of the election, votes cast in person today, I declare that Dale Matheson, Carr Hilton Levante LLP is appointed as the independent auditor of the company for the ensuing year, and the directors are authorized to remunerate and to pay those auditors. Mr. Secretary, are there any other business items to come before this meeting?
No, there's not. There being no further business to come before the meeting, and all ballots having been collected, polls and now closed. This concludes the formal part of our meeting. The meeting is now adjourned, and I will open the floor to questions. Thank you all for enduring that. But what I'd like to do, and one of the things that I think is primary to the investors' concerns, or I should say interest maybe more specifically, is canistrips, and why canistrips is such a unique product, why it is state of the art, and why it sits in an area unlike any other delivery system. And to that end, I'm going to have Dr. Sanderson explain canistrips to you. You're going to have an understanding of canistrips that I can't give you. So, Dr. Sanderson.
Ian to put the slides up.
And he's doing it.
Let's see, am I pressing the right button? Yeah. That's delivery that we're all used to for ingesting cannabis. It turns out that there's this thing called bioavailability. That is how much of the substance that you're taking in actually gets into your body, gets to the tissues where it's going to have some effect, be that the brain or the muscles or what have you. Generally, the transdermal route is extremely inefficient, and you get much less than 10% of whatever cannabinoid you put on the skin will actually get into your bloodstream. Although there's some things that we can do to change that. These are just the classical studies. Smoking is considered the most efficient way, and yet, interestingly enough, only about 50% of what you're smoking in a marijuana cigarette kind of thing or vaping will actually enter into the bloodstream and be available. Edibles, the number is actually considerably smaller than most people think. Only about 6 to 12% of what you're taking in, let's say in a brownie, will actually get into your bloodstream. Or that part of that does, it's taken up by the liver and disposed of very quickly. Rectal route, I don't advocate, but again, limited. Sublingual, we start to get a better absorption and a higher bioavailability. Look at this. In both a third-party study that we didn't do and one that we did, the rates of total bioavailability is up to 76%. Now this is really important because if you think about what are the limitations in the state of California, we're only allowed to put 10 milligrams into a product. There's going to be a huge difference, however, between 10 milligrams delivered by a canistrip versus 10 milligrams delivered in a brownie, i.e. you could be absorbing 3 times as much. So, here's the basics of canistrip science. We nanonize the molecules. In other words, we disperse them into their tiniest fractions with high intensity ultrasound. We form a carrier around it, what Brad calls a lipocyte. I think he made that word up.
I did.
And then we add additional ingredients to enhance the transport and utilization by tissues. That's what allows us to get, for instance, across the blood-brain barrier for an enhanced effect neurally. Then this whole mixture is embedded in a polymer that forms the actual physical strip. And then we, by combining these technologies, we get down to the fact that the cannabinoids that we're ingesting by buccal mucosa have a much better chance of getting into your bloodstream and into your tissues. Oops, I'm messing up again here. What we're really going to talk about right now is bioavailability, and I'm going to share some data with you that we have collected in the past 6 months or so that's actually pretty interesting. We're talking now about the oral cavity, the buccal cavity, which is this little space here between the inner and outer part of your cheek. The buccal route gives us several advantages to absorption, including avoidance of first pass, which means when you absorb through the gut, it first goes to the liver, and the liver likes to gobble up a good portion of what of the cannabinoids you've taken in by your GI tract. And it gives us a lot of stability in terms of the absorption dynamics as well. If you smoke, it immediately goes into your tissues. There's no first pass phenomenon. It goes out to the tissues very quickly, and that is an advantage in one sense because more gets absorbed. But there's another actually interesting advantage to edibles that people have recognized for some time, that you get a different kind of a psychogenic effect from edibles. And it has to do, this is the first pass metabolic disposal that goes through the liver. It turns out that when passing through the GI tract, you get a conversion of THC into 11-hydroxy-THC, which is more potent psychogenically than the actual THC molecule. So when you're smoking and you're getting all that THC distributed out, that's fine, you get a lot of it, but it's not nearly as potent as this guy. And this guy, the metabolism actually happens in the gut, right? So here again, it's like, oh, the gut has some advantages, smoking has some advantages, so we're kind of thinking, how can we combine these advantages? Well, we can get the best of both worlds with canistrips, because we've figured out what the enzyme systems are in the gut called the brush border enzymes. We figured out which enzymes are responsible for that conversion of THC to 11-hydroxy-THC, and we can add them to the strip. So we did a study. This is classically what you'll see when THC cannabis is given in a dose. You'll see how the different tissues take it up at different rates. This is over many, many hours. This is a typical subjective study where people will rate how they feel, what level of high they have, what level of satisfaction they have with the product. Intravenous, smoke, and oral. And there's usually this rapid uptake for smoked and obviously intravenous, and a much slower, more gradual curve for oral. So we did our own study, and here's what we found that was really interesting. If you compare this blue line now, it's going to be, this is over only 2 hours, so it's the very initial phases. Well, the first 2 hours, if you expect what you would get from smoking, this is the same dose now, versus oral, this little old or brown line here, versus buccal, this gray line. And these are the blood levels at various intervals in the first 2 hours after giving a dose either buccally, same dose orally, same dose smoking. You see that there's you see a much higher level of THC with both smoking and with oral up to this 2 hour point. This is THC that we're measuring, only one cannabinoid THC. But then if we measure the subjective response, in other words, how people are feeling, we see that the differences are kind of in the opposite direction. We get smoking, again, what you'd expect, a high peak early, tapering off. With oral, you get a much more gradual peak, but it never really gets to that high level. But look what happens with the strips, with cannabis strips. After peaking a little while to get going, it actually exceeds smoking in its psychogenic effect. Reason, we figured out, is when we went back and measured plasma 11 hydroxy THC. That's the converted molecule that's more active, more psychoactive than the actual THC is. And we see that by 2 hours, we have exceeded the level that you get with either smoking or with oral. So we've got this more advantageous conversion now, or metabolism going on, because of the way we deal with the strips, chemistry, inducing that enzyme that causes the conversion without having to go through the gut. So we avoid first pass metabolism on the one hand. On the other hand, we give the advantages of gut, which is that enzymatic conversion. So bottom line, 10 milligrams of an edible cannabis product maybe give you 5 milligrams of clinical effect. It's actually probably more like 2 or 3. 10 milligrams strip delivers the whole 10 milligrams. So question, why sacrifice half of the therapeutic experience by going wrong? So this was a little advertisement that somebody had done. Better than brownies, LDS replaces edibles with equal doses of cannabis strips, and it fell off the side. But what it says is it's not an equal dose. We're giving you a much better dose. That 10 milligrams that we're giving you is quite a bit better, maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 times better than what you're going to get with oral edibles. And this is just, again, to tell you that this is just one tiny slice of the science that we're looking at. These are some of the things that are ongoing right now, more bioavailability studies, because we're actually discovering some new things there. We're looking at flavonoids, which is a whole other fraction of the plant that nobody really talks about, but it is what's bringing in a lot of the health benefits of the plant beyond the super cannabinoids. We're doing clinical research in collaboration with UCI, University of California, Irvine, which actually has a dedicated cannabis research, clinical research unit now funded by the federal government. We're obviously doing a lot with genetics, as you've already heard about, and we're looking at this combination of cannabis molecules with other beneficial molecules like curcumin and glycine and others. So with that, any questions? Thank you. Yes, sir.
There's something like 60 cannabinoids in cannabis, and I was told that you don't really know what all 60 do, you know what maybe 10 or 20 do. Is that true?
It is true. The science of cannabis fractionation and the clinical effects that you get with the different cannabinoids is still really very early. And then in addition to that, there's the combination of the cannabinoids amongst themselves. And then there's the interaction between cannabinoids and other parts of the plant, the terpenes, the flavonoids, other elements that altogether create a very complex picture. So we use a sort of a set of techniques called bioinformatics to try and build a database of experience with all this so that we can go back and make some sense out of those, a considerable number of potential interactions. Yes, sir.
You found the curcumin, the bioavailability on the candy strip, is it just as high as THC?
Yes, because we also nanonize the curcumin. And you'll find a good deal of literature out there suggesting that if you take any of these flavonoids, curcumin in particular, because there's 10,000 published papers on PubMed about curcumin, one way to get it to absorb better through the gut even, again, is to nanonize it. And since we do that, and we add to that the buccal delivery, we're getting a good amount of curcumin in on our curcumin strip.
Would that be for pain management, cancer?
Curcumin is maybe one of the most potent antioxidants that we know of. There's a number of trials that have occurred and that are still ongoing for its anti-cancer effects. So it's a potent anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer. It really is just one of these little magic molecules in medicine right now that we are just beginning to appreciate how powerful it really is. Yes?
I read where curcumin is the active ingredient in turmeric.
Yes.
So what I do is when I take curcumin every day, I take bioperine, which is supposed to be to make it much more bioavailable to the body. Do you use bioperine if you're using curcumin in the kind of strips?
Yeah, it's not going to help that much because what it's doing is trying to help the intestinal absorption, but we overcome all those barriers anyway with what we do on the strip. Yeah. Yeah.
When do you see the University of California give us some results on?
We're still just at the very first stages of that. So we've recently this year added Dr. Jonathan Lakey to our medical advisory board, and he's a member of that faculty group at UCI. So we've got a conference with them coming up, I believe, next month. In which we start, kind of discussing our capabilities, how we might support them in clinical trials. I think amongst the faculty there, what they're most interested in is our ability to very precisely dose. As you look at those bioavailability curves, you know how you can get a lot of vagary when you're taking a dose orally. A lot of it will depend on when you last ate and what you last ate and all that sort of thing. And if you take it smoking, well, doctors are not going to recommend smoking or vaping because both cause damage to the lungs. So this provides for clinical studies a nice way to give a dose in a way that's not bringing nasty side effects in. So they're very interested in that, plus the precision that we can do. So we can take a 10 milligram strip, and it's very easy to kind of cut it in half if you just want 5 milligrams and so forth.
Like, are you hoping by the end of 2019 to have some of these every day?
I don't know that we're going to see any publications in 2019, but I think that this initiative that we have to get started with the university will bear some fruit in terms of us being involved in clinical trials.
Will the data support you moving into Canada? The data that you get, will it support you moving into Canada?
Good question. I hadn't considered that, but I think anything that we can do that brings us into the spotlight in terms of the medical community in general, and in particular that medical community that is university-based, that publishes in peer-reviewed publications, that's going to build the imprimatur of respectability that many cannabis companies, frankly, are never going to achieve because that's not their focus. But with LDS, from the very start, from the very first discussion that Brad and I had, it was about health and the benefits that we could bring to a large population of people, and this very notion that the cannabis plant contains just a plethora of wonderful things that we're just beginning to discover that can be applied to various kinds of health problems. All right, thank you.
So we all got to go on a tour. We got a little bit of food, and I don't know if there's any other questions. I'm sure there are questions that weren't answered on the tour or that have maybe come to fruition having thought about it longer. But if there are any questions I can answer at this point before we call it a day, I would like to answer those questions for you. Yes, sir.
Which, I know that we own, LDS owns several properties in and around Adelanto.
Yes.
With River, somewhat towards Sacramento. Are you able to list out any sort of?
The properties in Adelanto are fairly simple. We have, let's go to the most far-reaching piece, which is we have a piece of property on the private airport. Obviously, that's a little futuristic in the sense that we'd be able to deliver products anywhere in the United States or California, should that become legal to do so. I would say that's the most far-thinking piece that we have. We bought a piece of property on Koala, which was the kind of the road that we took between Commerce Way and Rancho, of 10 acres that we intended to put greenhouses on. Quite frankly, after we did our analysis on outdoor grow and where we'd really like to go, that became less of a focus, if you will. But something else came to focus there, and that was the fact that we had a 30-inch high-pressure natural gas line running in front of the property. And I can't tell you how rare a 30-inch high-pressure gas line going nowhere is. This line was put in for a project that never happened, but it's a perfect kind of gas line for a power station. So LDS is going to be, in some form or fashion, joint venturing cannabis power station on Koala in the very near future. So that piece of property obviously will afford LDS income and will be contributing obviously to the cannabis industry being successful here in Adelanto, and also an additional revenue source for the city. So that property, although not being used for its initial purpose, this purpose is significantly more valuable almost at every level. So that would be probably that, and the piece that is catty-cornered to the stadium here. And this, of course, is this is all part of a larger development zone, but we'll be having, obviously, that cannabis dispensary there just on Rancho off of 395, but there's also another 5 parcels there that LDS will probably joint venture for something more commercial, hardware stores, drive-through, fast food, something. We haven't looked at it any further than that. That piece was purchased originally because the 6 pieces were in fact a package. And with the license and everything else, that one parcel's more valuable than the other 5 parcels put together at this point. So that will be a dispensary. It will also be the point of distribution for the direct delivery. We have one other parcel that's on the edge of the cannabis zone that may or may not become included in the cannabis zone at some point. I don't think that it's going to be as relevant. It was a fairly inexpensive piece of property, and we took it as where we thought we'd do distribution to begin with. But at this point, we don't have specific plans for that piece of property unless we trade it to somebody else for some other purpose. So those are the real estate assets that LDS owns. We are looking at farms and other properties up north, but I think you're going to find that any acquisitions we do at this point would be more focused towards an outdoor grow. We believe that the genetics that we're producing are going to produce significant yields outdoors without any kind of help, and certainly far less expensive than what it costs to grow indoors, regardless of power or anything else. So that's where we stand with real estate. Yes, sir.
Well, I know this is a futuristic question, but when do you see us able to start considering the sale of canna strips outside of California, United States?
That's a $1 billion question. I don't see the changes that would be necessary coming within this election year. I would think that anything that happens to forward federal legalization or decriminalization or allow for transportation outside the boundaries of individual states, I don't think is going to happen until we get a consensus in the federal government for both Republican and Democrats alike that they can agree on. I haven't seen any indication that any of the legislation has that kind of support currently. So I would say that cannabis is significantly more controversial than other things that they have on their plate, and they can't get those done. So I don't have a whole lot of hope that in the next 2 years anything's going to happen. The only thing I could hope for is the banking side. That would be enough for me. That would be a monster win if we could use a bank account. Then we wouldn't have to have AK-47s and Gatling guns in our facility. So I hope that answered your question. Yes, sir.
When are we going to break ground, and when are we hoping to have the dispensary open?
Okay, those are a couple of questions. Charles Rangel, head of the planning department, has told me this will be on the planning commission's dais for May 9th. If that's approved, then in 2 weeks it would move to the city council to vote on. At that point, if it was approved, we'd get a grading permit, and we could basically start to work. Leo, who you met, our contractor, basically has given us a 9 to 11 week window that it would take to begin, end, and complete, with the city's help, with obviously the inspectors and what have you. If all things are timely, we could get it done in 9 weeks, if not maybe 11 or 12 weeks. So that's kind of our time frame. We hope that starts sometime in May.
So during the tour, I asked you when we're going to be profitable, and you said by the end of 2019.
Yes.
Do you foresee us having to do a capital raise at any point in the next year?
No, but I haven't seen the last 2 capital raises really that needed to be done. Our intention was, obviously, when we started, to just do strips. We did a raise that would have allowed us to make strips if we didn't have to go into the cultivation business, if we didn't have to go into the extraction business, if we didn't have to go into the dispensary and distribution and transportation businesses. Those additional businesses caused the raise that we basically did with Canaccord. This is kind of the last mile, and I will tell you that our intention was not to have to do this raise, but we would have still had dilution. Unfortunately, the November, December somewhat crash of all the markets left our warrants out of the money. We would have definitely been in the money with our warrants, especially with the fact that we were doing a significant amount of revenue, everything else. Everything looked perfect, right up to the point that it didn't. So we had no control over the market crash November, December, which put our warrants out of the money, which means they didn't get exercised, which means that additional $7 million did not come in. That was the reason for the necessity for this raise. The fact that we actually made it all the way to April without it will tell you a little bit about the fact that maybe we made a little bit of money. But the fact is that this model is dependent upon all the pieces you saw today to be profitable, not just break even, but significantly profitable. because we need the proper genetics to grow just the amount of material we need for the strips, which have a great margin, and they have even a better margin if we can deliver those strips directly to the consumer. And that's the model, to build it, basically manufacture it, package it, distribute it, and deliver it to the consumer. That model works well for Apple. Obviously, you buy an Apple computer, you bought it from Apple. Very few stores carry Apple computers. Well, those margins go to the company, and that's the difference here. So that's our insulation, if you will, against the rest of the market, against the illegal market, the gray market, the pesticide market, everything else. We basically have built a model that once it's complete is insulated from all the other pitfalls that this market obviously continues to deliver to us. So I'm excited about the fact that this dispensary and the 420 prime delivery that we're gonna have is gonna be, it's really gonna be the last step that proves out all of the other methodology that we've put into place. And that foundation is really strong, as you saw today. So we know how much we can produce. We know the genetics we're capable of building. We've proved that our extraction, the oil we produce, is used, well, anyone will buy it. So the fact that we make probably at this point, because there's more THC in cannabis than we would like, we have our excess cannabis is being sold to vape pen companies. So stuff that, quite frankly, we probably would have no use for in those volumes, we're able to sell and pay for the operation to grab the other pieces that we want. And specifically, we want to go harder and stronger on CBD, CBN, CBG, and the flavonoids and terpenes that are beginning to show significant results in all areas of senolytics and health, you name it. So ultimately, if somebody wants the best product and they have any issues or they just want to stay healthy, I think they're going to look at our product first. Is there anything else? Anybody? Oh, yes, sir.
So, top of the direct customer model, but also we have agreements right now, distribution for
Correct.
cannabis. What do you see in terms of distribution going ahead, say for this year? Is it mostly going to be through Rise, or how many dispensaries do you expect it to be?
Obviously, right now, Rise is all of our distribution. But that will begin to change very rapidly once we're delivering direct. And I'm not saying that we wouldn't still use Rise. I'm not saying that Rise still won't be a part of the model. It will be until it isn't. Ultimately, I would look to protect Rise in the areas that they've established initially. So, but there's a lot of other dispensaries for us to send our own team out. So my expectation is that we'll start sending those teams out hopefully very early in June, July. So, and those teams will be targeting all the dispensaries everywhere, and you'll see a significant amount of advertising direct to the consumer, which is going to be a completely different model, if you will, from the model we've been working under, which is just depending on distributor. But there's really no purpose for us as building this foundation to try and build the distributors book, if you will, of cannabis delivery when we want to build our own book. So the book that they already have, fine, we'll respect that. But we don't want to build clients and dispensaries and pass them on to a distributor when we're only a couple months away from being able to do that ourselves. Yes, sir.
So hypothetical question.
Yep.
If a lucrative deal is offered to us from big pharma, big alcohol, or big tobacco, which one would you choose and why?
What are my choices again? Ice cream? No. Ben and Jerry's, no. It's not so much what industry I would think, but I have to say that I would have a hesitation in all those areas, specifically because I think whatever we're doing right now will be abused, put on a shelf, in some way won't get to the customer that we were targeting in the very beginning. If I had some assurance that can of strips would always be $1 and every family who had children that had epilepsy or cancer could get that dosage and get that same product for $1, I might think differently. But I've already seen EpiPens go from $15 to $45 to $75 to $750. I don't believe Big Pharma has anyone's best interests at heart. That's not where we started. I will tell you that this is not a financial exercise. And you know, if it is primarily to prove this point, that if we build the best product and make it affordable, we'll make a fortune. But making a fortune isn't the first step. The real first step is to make the right product that everybody can afford. The fortune will come afterwards. So I'm not looking to get out of, I promised my wife I would never be a CEO again. When I took this job, I said, oh, it's gonna be 6 months. I'll get this thing cleaned up. I'll be making strips. I'll be out of here. It was 4.5 years ago. I hear about that quite often. It's brought up to me just about every time I call and say I'm gonna be late. And I'm late a lot because just like last night, it was an early meeting last night. We got out of there about 10:30, I think. So, but we've had 1 o'clock AMs. We've had, and I'm here every Wednesday. I've missed 2 in the last 117 meetings. So I'm actively involved here in the city, not just for cannabis, but LDS is also active here in the community. We have a lot to do with the food drives. We sponsored the last mayor's food drive a couple weeks ago. We actually found out that the grammar school here, the state had not modified or improved their library in over 40 years. They didn't have any books that probably weren't copyrighted in the 1950s. We rebuilt the library. We basically built the kids did that with the help of Leo, who you met, and some of our funds. I cannot tell you the value that had for 400 kids that gave us a thank you card that was 40 feet long, 4 feet high, on art paper, all signed by every student. This is from...
It came out beautiful.
But again,
Something to be proud of.
when the Little League got robbed, and it was opening day in 2 weeks, and they didn't have bases, and they didn't have this, we stepped in with the help, we and Geo both, who run the jail and ICE, split the cost of bringing Little League so that all these families on the north end would have, obviously, baseball for their kids. There's not too many things. These are small. They're small in the scope, but I will tell you, that the rewards are great. And that's more about this company than being able to sell it at some point. If I thought somebody could do a better job, I'd be the first one to put them here. Yes, sir.
Right, as investors, should we have any concern looking into the future as to a hostile takeover, or let's say Big Pharma or Big Alcohol come and buy LDS?
I think it...
Did that happen, or is that even a concern?
I would say it's a concern. And it's a concern to me in the sense that obviously there's companies out there with lots of money, and relatively speaking, the technology that Dr. Sanderson has created is significantly more valuable than the company. But I don't think anyone understands what we're doing yet. I'm hoping by the time they do that we've moved into a safer place. The fact that we can be profitable this year, hopefully we'll start to get the proper valuations. We've got Canaccord and others looking at us right now for recommendations. I think once our financials for last year, specifically the fourth quarter, get out, I think people will have a different set of valuations for us than they do right now. But again, it's hard. This is a hard market to value because you've got companies trading at astronomical multiples who seriously, operationally, are losing money. They may have enough money in the bank to be profitable from their interest, but they're losing money in their operations. That doesn't qualify for a $45 or $65 stock to me, but again, we'll see. I mean, the future will tell. But I think, again, you're going to find that what we're building is significantly greater than just this cannabis piece. And we're going to continue to work with, obviously, universities. Dr. Sanderson's going to continue to develop. We're going to do, we hope, amazing things. But first and foremost, we're going to get this product to patients at a price that's going to basically be affordable to those families. It won't put a hardship on them, and it's going to make us a lot of money. I don't know how you find a better model than that. You get to do the right thing, you get to do it at a price that does not bankrupt somebody, and you get the benefit. I'm excited about that part. That's going to set us aside. I don't know, I mentioned this to a few people, but with that dispensary, we're going to be able to donate strips. Right now, we can't donate anything because you have to, the state of California is allowed for donations, but it has to come from a dispensary. They have to pay the tax on it, but they can't receive any money. Well, what dispensary is going to do that for us? Ain't going to happen. But if we donate 1 million strips to kids with cancer at City of Hope, and we donate 1 million strips to the Veterans Administration, and we donate 1 million strips to seniors in cancer rehab or in rehabilitation, we're going to get some massive publicity. We're going to get publicity like none of these. And you know what? We don't need a PR firm to do that. It's the cost of those strips, but at the fact that we could do that for a couple $100,000 and be on the cover of Time magazine, I'm sorry, it'll change this narrative. This narrative will change dramatically when we can do that. And we can do that only because we're vertically integrated the way we are. We couldn't do that any other way. There's no other way for us to do that and not cost us a fortune, right? So, because we'd have to buy a dispensary to even do that. We're going to have our own dispensary. And again, we've got a 900% margin if we do this properly. Yes, sir.
You made a comment about us seeds growing well outdoors. They will do very well outdoors. And it'll be cheaper to grow outdoors because we're not going to need the facilities, the power, the utilities. We just did an acquisition in Sacramento, or a joint venture, whatever you want to call it. Do you have a goal of how many square feet you'd like to get outdoors to support the facility and to support 2020 revenues?
I mean, if we were able to run the equipment 24/7, which would be 1 million strips a day, approximately 12 to 15 acres, properly managed in operating every 30 days harvest type, would more than be sufficient to do that. We don't have a model for that. That would be basically 30 million strips a month.
Are you striving for more?
Well, we're capable of a lot right now. So we've got some room to basically create market, and if that market gets half of what we're able to produce, then we'll probably be able to, justify doubling our manufacturing capabilities. But as you saw, we're going to be able to do extraction at a huge volume, significantly more than we could ever imagine manufacturing. But again, the market's going to tell us, how many of these strips we're going to need to produce every month. But it doesn't take many for us to break even. Truth is, one day of manufacturing breaks LDS across the board, all licenses, Canada, US, all of our consultants, everybody break even. We sell 500,000 strips a month. One day's operation, we're break even. So 2 days would be good.
How about 5 days?
5 days would be brilliant. Yes, sir.
How do you know these plants do well outside? Have you had them in outdoor grow facilities already?
Yes, and a number of this genetics came from outdoors already. So these were outdoor grow genetics that were making it. We actually cross-pollinated them with a couple of strains that had significant resistance to mold and pests. And I don't know if Jonathan showed me, but we've got 40,000 genetic seeds. I mean, we got a lot to rake through, okay? And as we're basically genetically testing about 2,000 of these plants every 30 days. It's still going to take us 2 or 3 years to get close to what it is we want. Jonathan likes to use an analogy which I like very much, which is the first grow gets you halfway there. The next grow gets you halfway there. But you're never going to get all the way there. You can keep cutting it in half, say every 4 to 6 months, but it's going to take you 900 years to get 100% if you ever get there. But it's okay, because the first 3 years you get 96% of what you want. And that's more than sufficient for what we're trying to accomplish. Yes, sir. Oh, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Is there, it might be a silly question, but is there a shelf life on the strips?
That's a great question. We thought there'd be a shelf life. The one thing we're fairly confident is the shelf life's better with the encapsulation than it was before, but we have strips that are 4 years old that don't seem to have lost. And I think a big part of it's the fact that they're encased to begin with, so they're basically stuck in time on a sticky strip. But I'm sure there's some degradation. John?
It turns out that the natural polymer that we use is actually also a preservative. Who knew? So without having to add chemicals that you wouldn't like, this nice chemical called polyion that provides the basis, the backbone of the strip, it actually prevents bugs from growing in it. So from contamination point of view, it could last centuries, for all we know. And from a degradation point of view, in terms of losing potency, it's very unlikely to lose more than 1% a year.
Now, we would like everyone to use it immediately. We don't want anybody putting this on the shelf and just saving it and go, well, I've got one, so I don't ever have to buy another one. Yeah, but so we probably won't be advertising that. Thank you. Yes?
What about the previous question of hostile takeover?
Yes.
How much percentage of the company does insiders and management on?
I think my numbers are around 8%.
Total management?
Total management, this is a rough guess. I'd say maybe 15. I mean, this is a shareholder company. We're actually a public company, believe it or not.
And based on the second question I have, is it's very abnormal that I noticed that you can lock stock options every year up to 10%, which is very high for any publicly listed company. Is that because shareholders, are you going to change that? Because people see that and it's kind of high.
You know, it hasn't been an issue. I mean, we're certainly not exercising 10% every year. It's not one of the things on my radar, but for me, it's a benefit for those coming on to be able to give somebody an option to come on board, obviously, but we haven't had to use a significant amount of that. And most of them, quite frankly, with this latest downturn in the market, November, December, most of the options weren't in the money. So, I mean, we had options as high as 80 cents, I think. So, those being exercised would have been a good thing. Again, looking forward, I hope that there's incentives for everybody to work really hard. So, yeah, and I agree. Certainly. But the one thing that we're also allowed to do, and one of the things that, you know, I continue to look at, is the fact that when we look at the financial model of this company, the ability to buy back shares, once we turn that corner, like I said, 500,000 strips a day is basically us coming in on the manufacturing side and working for 2 days. We turn that corner and able to buy back, I think, as much as 5% per year without CSE approval. We could certainly go back to the CSE and probably start buying back our shares. If we don't get proper valuation and we're making money, I will tell you right now, this company's going to start buying back a lot of shares. We'll go get the approval to do it, because we'll bring that price up to where we think it should be. Obviously, if we think it's undervalued and we've got a lot of money in the treasury, there's absolutely no reason for us not to buy back our undervalued shares. So that's always been kind of my focus, is that once this company becomes profitable, that it can reduce its dilution, because there's not a whole lot of other places for this money to go. I mean, once you're making that kind of money, you know, hopefully we're successful in finding a proper partner in Canada. But Canada would open up the rest of the world, and that's a fairly inexpensive venture for us, in that we've already spent all the money necessary to be able to do what we do now. That learning curve's over. That development curve is over. All the time and energy that Dr. Sanderson spent is done. You know, we're in the final lap of this race. Much easier to move a completed model with technology that's already been proven to a point where you can, in fact, distribute around the world. So that's going to be an easy step. Again, I think that will be able to create revenue that would allow us, again, to reduce our dilution. Yes, sir.
Do you have any plans for attracting institutional investors in the future? Because my concern is, you know, it takes volume to drive the stock price up and keep it sustained. Our volume would certainly increase if we had more institutional investors.
I think that if we get proper recommendations and proper valuations, we'll get the kind of interest that you're looking for.
Yes.
Institutional investors are great when they're coming in this company, especially if your child has an ailment that is benefited by this product, especially if you're a senior citizen and you're using this product to sleep or reduce your pain or inflammation, especially if you're a vet that's using this product. You're going to find that the people using this product will become shareholders as well. And again, I think that is ultimately what a public company is about, right? So that's my hope, is that although institutional investors may come and look at us, I like the fact that this is my favorite day of the year. You know, everyone else, I talk to other CEOs, they go, oh God, you got an AGM. I said, no, I got an AGM. You don't understand. I enjoy this. This is my chance to explain to my shareholders what it is we're doing. I'm proud of what we've done. I'm proud of where we're going. And they're the ones that have stepped out there. They're the ones that have taken the risk along with those of us here that, you know, we're going to have the benefit. And when everyone else, you know, is looking at us and saying, oh, I don't know how this is going to work, or I don't know how that's going to work. And then when they see it, I tell you from experience, they say, oh, I knew that. You know, trust me, we'll never get credit for it when it works. But the fact is that you will all know, because you were all here before. And you will have watched it happen. And it's a pretty amazing thing when you turn that corner. Because all of a sudden everybody knew it was going to happen. But you know what? You're the ones that knew it was going to happen. So, you know, that's exciting for me. Yes?
Question for Casey.
Oh, Casey.
So first of all, thank you for the additional communications. Because like the light turned on and all of a sudden we're hearing a lot from OBS, and I really appreciate that for myself as an investor. Second part of my real question is, what is the marketing and sales strategy and communication strategy over the next 6 months?
So the marketing and communication strategy, that's a touchy subject with the state. The state only allows us to market in certain ways. We can't do paid advertisings and things like that. All of it mostly has to be organic. So we're taking a more creative, and we have to take a more creative approach by using influencers, micro-influencers, more educational videos versus quote-unquote weed videos. So we have to, those are kind of the two main things on the marketing and communication side that we'll be bringing Canistrips to. So it's going to be utilizing the influencers, micro-influencers, and then educational videos about the product, largely in we'll we'll dumb it down a little bit from Sanderson's terminology, but it's more about educating the masses on what the product is, because there's nothing like it out there, and they all assume it's just an edible, right? You know, how many people have gone up to me and said, "Oh, you guys got that strip, that edible strip," and you got to correct them. So, educating the market on the differences between the two, our strip and everybody else, and then we use the influencers to essentially make it cool, right? So, yeah, those are the biggest two things we're going after.
Communications coming, my friend.
Will do.
Thank you, Casey.
Yes, sir.
So I don't know if you guys have thought this far ahead, but past Canada, exporting to other countries, in your minds, is there any top 2 or 3 countries in your minds and reasoning why?
The most, I'd say the interest that we've received so far has been Germany. Germany is far and away probably, but we were also, I visited Germany some 2 years ago and discussed the strips with 2 of the universities there. So I'm not surprised that and they have a genetics group over there that we talked to early on. But I think Germany, Spain, the UK are probably would be the greater focuses right now. If we were currently in production in Canada, I think that's where we'd be looking. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, I thought I'd read that you had done some sort of a joint deal with a Canadian company out of Richmond, and that you were looking at property in.
We have a memorandum of interest. So we're exploring their capabilities and what have you. So at this point, we're trying to do something, but we haven't done it. So it's still in a formulative stage. It would be great if it happens, but we don't have that finished yet. So
We have started those discussions. We've also have other discussions that are not precluded by those discussions. So again, want to do what's best for the company. I don't want to just do a licensing agreement or a royalty agreement. The margins are too great. The opportunity is too large. To have our product in Canada able to ship to 1 billion other people, no, I think that is a significantly better opportunity for us to try and maximize for the company.
Well, just if I could follow up then. So what is stopping you from, when you're a Canadian company, what's stopping you from just
We're exploring all the...
rebuilding what you built here in Burnaby as an example?
Well, because we're basically going through all the regulatory issues that would require us to do whatever we need to do to get that license. In other words, we don't really want a joint venture. We want an opportunity to create our own license.
Right.
And so we're dealing through the regulatory requirements to accomplish that. And so we're not going to announce or move forward until we have all of our questions answered and be very comfortable in the fact that going forward and putting any kind of capital up or purchasing ground or anything else is going to lead to a conclusion that is the conclusion we want. So that's a great song. It's not on the back burner, but it's being worked through. So will it come to a conclusion? I can't tell you that yet because we don't have all the information we need yet. But we're trying to accomplish a situation by where we would end up with a license, a producer's license. I don't think we'll end up with a international distribution license. That would be very difficult in the environment in Canada right now. But it would allow us to contract, if you will, someone to sell the product in other countries and still be able to keep the lion's share of that margin. So again, which is, important. But we're also concerned about the biomass capabilities in Canada. Canada, whether you're aware of it or not, has had a significant amount of issues with pesticides, which irritates me because these are indoor grows. You can't tell me you didn't know you used pesticide on your material. It's a closed environment. Somebody brought pesticide in there. So again, we're looking at the fact that, if we had a large enough outdoor grow in BC, even Calgary, one grow would be enough for the entire year. So, a lot of thought and modeling is going into this decision, but there's no reason to do an agreement or a deal with someone if it doesn't yield the end result that the company's looking for. So again, we continue to look at opportunities and try and we obviously want the partner to do well, but at the same time we have an agenda. We have an agenda, and our shareholders are my ultimate concern, because I do not want to give this technology away for a royalty. I think it would be absurd. And later I'd be looked at like the guy who gave away the golden goose for goose down. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
So last summer, canister has always been the flagship product that the company looked forward to, but we've looked vaping at one point in time, cartridges. Last summer, we're looking at oils and white label. Where is that going at this point? Are we just going to be a canister?
Well, yeah.
Do we have other products that are going to...
The issue with, obviously, the illegal market is significant. A year ago, distillate was $12,000 a liter. Today, it's under $5,000. It's being produced outside of California without taxes, illegally, and shipped across the border.
it doesn't leave a lot of room for us to do this legally. So we proved our point. We can make amazing product. We know what we're doing in extraction. We know what we're doing. We can do the highest end of diamonds. We can do the highest end of live resin. We can preserve all the terpenes, all the flavonoids, and still put it in a product that basically can be delivered to you in a strip. So ultimately, we've done these exercises. We understand this market. We understand what our costs are to participate in any one of these areas. And canisters is still the best place to be. So we'll continue to sell probably THC that's more than we need to vape pen companies or whoever at a premium. We don't have to sell a lot of it, and it's a fantastic product. I don't know if you saw any of it. It's basically champagne colored and 96-94% THC. To that end, we don't have a whole lot of other concerns except for making sure that we are capable of producing enough of the combination of THC, CBD, CBN, CBG to make canistrips. And that's the benefit of everything. I mean, the fact is if those prices had stayed at $12,000 a liter, we'd have made $7,000 a liter in a month. That would have been a lot of money. Didn't stay there.
Any signs of California stepping up to do something like that, or is that just
You know, it's impossible for me to figure out where California is going and why they aren't more aggressive in their enforcement areas. Like I said, I don't know, I told a couple of people that there's an app out there right now that tells you how to bring illegal material from Oregon to California and miss the police and the immigration and miss the agricultural department, everybody else.
Any state.
Yeah, any state now. Yeah, so this app is Arizona, you can do it anywhere. Well, if I was the police, I think I'd buy this app. Save me all kinds of investigatory time. I just hack this app and find out who's on it and where they are on the GPS. Yeah, I don't know. It's like some kind of cartoon when you actually look at it. But again, we're building an opportunity that's insulated from all of those things. And nobody else can say that. We can do our genetics, we can grow our plants, we can extract from our own plants, we can make our strip, we can still have a 900% margin. We don't need to look at anything else. We don't need to do anything else. We do this right, pretty much solves every other issue. And we were always doing this. So we never stopped. It's just that when packaging changed or something else, we're sitting with a facility that can do all kinds of things. So, let's do this while we're waiting for that to get figured out. And we have really good people. I don't know how you felt about the tour, but I will tell you, these people are committed. They love this company. They love their job. They love what they do. Unlike any other cannabis company, we have amazing benefits. We have insurance that basically, for those of you in Canada, you don't think about insurance, everybody has insurance. That's not true in California. We basically have no deductible. They can go, this is platinum insurance, they can go anywhere, they can go to any doctor. That's unheard of. Most of the time you get a list of doctors you can go to. Some of them are actually qualified. But these insurance companies, I don't believe in insurance that doesn't insure you. So we spend probably an extra $12,000 a month making sure that the people that work for LDS have insurance that they in fact can use anywhere with any doctor, anytime, under any circumstance. And let me tell you, there's a lot of loyalty behind doing just those simple humanitarian things for your employees. So again, these are things that you're not going to see in any other company here. Not one other company that we've seen that does this. But again, you also got a chance to see those individuals who work for us, who work for LDS, their family. They care about the company, care about all aspects of the company, care about the company, how the company is viewed in the city. They're at every one of these food drives, they're at every cleanup. The contributions just from our employees to the city are significant. They make a significant difference to this community. And again, that puts us in rare air. So when our councilmen, our assemblymen, our senators come here to see our facility, they don't come just because of the facility. They come because of this culture that's been created around this facility and around the intent of this product. So again, I will tell you, this is an unusual company, and you should be proud to be shareholders of it. And I hope we can make it a financial benefit as well. But I think we've built the right foundation. I know we have the right product. I know we have the right people. And I thank all of you for allowing us the opportunity to prove that. So, yes, sir.
How new would you say is attributable to white label manufacturing? And where do you see that going in the future?
Ultimately, I like to see it non-existent. With our delivery and everything else, we should be able to deliver anything we make. There's no reason for us to deliver to somebody else, to put it in a package for us to deliver it. Why would we transport it?
Our quality is better, our oils are better quality, so people are like...
They're at least the best quality. So you might be able to match it, but I don't think you can beat it. So the fact is that because we're growing it, because we extracted it, we can sell it for a lot less than the person buying it from us. They've got other margins they have to put on it. They have to sell it to a distributor. There's every reason to believe that everything that we produce is going to be at the highest level of quality and at the most affordable price. Where else are you going to go? If you can go to Costco and get Nordstrom's, I'm sorry, that's where I'm going to go. I like Nordstrom's, but I'd rather pay Costco prices. If I can do both, that's what we intend to do. And I'm telling you, the delivery is going to change the world for us and for you. Yes?
How much white label are we doing right now? Have you got any new contracts or just tanks?
I would say more than half of what goes out is white label for sure. A lot of what we have is stockpiled, waiting for the city to make this tax change, because it's not advantageous for us to sell anything in any volume at the tax rates that existed yesterday.
So you've got a significant amount of stockpile?
Yes. Yeah, you guys didn't see there's no more room in the rooms. There's lots of material there. So we're very comfortable in where we're sitting right now. Very comfortable. We could probably, I don't know, what do you think, Casey? How long can we run strips before we run out of?
Days, months, weeks, years.
There's a lot. So there's thousands of liters. So we're in pretty good shape. Any other questions? I know you guys could do this all night. I'm good with that too. Yes, sir.
Dry strips.
You know what? How late is jet room open? We can't give them to you. We can't sell them to you yet. But the jet room, which is
9 o'clock?
Yeah.
Jet
Close at
room
9.
is, they're
About $500 away.
right on the other side of that building.
Do they have CBD as well?
Yes.
Yeah. Are they stocked up knowing that the investors are gonna be coming?
Did we deliver it right before 4:20?
Ralph, you talked to Manny. What did he say?
That's on the stock for everybody to come over.
Okay, there you go. All right. We made sure that was available.
Can I have them delivered to my motel room?
No, see, that's the other problem. They don't do delivery. See, otherwise we'd be delivering to your hotel room, to your hospital bed, to any place you wanted. So, yes, sir.
What's the status of our Trans-Canada shares?
They're ours. And I think they're trading at $7.50. So I don't know. We're making more money on Trans-Canada right now than we are anything else. Yeah, no, I'm not selling any shares. No, we're waiting for the $700 share program. So, no. As you know, Jim Pekulis was president. Jim was also the CEO of Weed Maps when I took it public and basically raised them $3 million to go public back in 2011 and 12. So Jim and I have known each other a long time, and we're very excited about what he's doing. And as you may or may not know, Trans-Canada rented half of that distribution empty warehouse that you saw. So we obviously, as big shareholders there, wish him all the best, and we'll help him in any way we can. Yes.
Just trying to understand, where do they overlap? Are they a competitor? Like, what are they going to be offering?
You'd have to ask Jim that. Jim's model is different than ours. I think that's a spectacular building he has up there in Modesto, I think it is. But I know what it's like to build a building out. I know what it takes to get all that done. There's, and Jim was there watching us do it too. He was president during the time we did that. So he should have a fairly good idea of what's ahead of him. I'm fairly confident he's got an idea in his head as to where he wants to go with it. But again, I would leave that idea for him to explain rather than for me to assume. So, Jim's quite capable. Else, anything to do with LDS? I'm not sure when their annual general meeting is, but I'll be there. So, with any of the rest of your shareholders. But I would also look at, I'd look at the things that LDS is going to be doing ancillary, like the power and what have you. I think you're going to see those to be benefits to the shareholders of LDS as well. So, if you guys don't have any other questions, there's still food back there, and there's obviously merchandise, can of strip shirts, all those kinds of great things, the things that we can give you. There's
obviously coming up next week.
the what?
Fourth quarter results.
Yes, which I'm excited about, because that's going to allow hopefully Canaccord and others to look at us and maybe give some guidance. That would be nice. That would be really nice. But yeah, it's all gonna, I'm very comfortable with where we are, and I think everyone, once the numbers start to reveal themselves, they'll get more comfortable. And certainly once these other issues are behind us, taxes being those issues, and the other new abilities of dispensary and delivery are in fact in place, this is a pretty well refined machine, and I don't think we'll have to look any further than what we have under the two roofs to see where we're going. And it'll be fairly easy for others to also, I think, be able to assess the value, and I believe it to be greater than what we see right now. So that's pretty much everything I have, but I do truly appreciate the fact that you were willing to come all this way to Adelanto, which is halfway between LA and Las Vegas, which is pretty much on its own. Thank you very much, Brad Eckenweiler, CEO. Thank you.